Hey, everybody on hold. Thank you for holding. How are you? Thanks for listening to Pastor's Perspective. We're going to begin, I want to say, in about 2 minutes or so. All right? So don't hang up. Thank you so much for listening. We'll get to you as soon as we can. All right? God bless you guys. Hang on. You know what that means. It's time for Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. My name is Brian Perez, and if you're listening on the radio on Monday, the 12th of September, we are not live today on Monday the 12th. We are recording this episode on Thursday the 8th, so if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you guys can call us using the number right there on the bottom of your screen. But it is a brand new episode. This is not a rerun. Unless, of course, you were watching it on Thursday on Facebook or YouTube, and now you're listening to it on the radio on Monday, then yes, you have heard this one before. But for the majority of you, this is a brand new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the program. Answering your questions today, we've got Bobby Conway from Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's the pastor there. He's also the guy you see on the 1 Minute Apologist channel, all 12 or 1,300 videos that are there. Make sure you subscribe to Bobby's 1 Minute Apologist channel. That way you can get notified every time he puts up a new video. And here in the studio with me, it's Phil Metzger, the pastor of Calvary San Diego. What is going on, gentlemen?
Hey, guys. I love doing this. It's Monday.
Good to be with you guys.
Good to see you, Bobby.
Yeah, good to see you too, bro. You haven't slept since Thursday, I guess.
Dude, and do I look like it? Does it? It's so obvious, huh?
You haven't changed.
Haven't changed. Nothing's changed at all.
Man. We're just marathoners, you know.
We take this serious.
That's right, we do. All right, so let's see who's on the phone. Who else has not gotten any sleep in the last 4 days? They've been on hold this whole time. We're going to begin with Dawn in Virginia. How can we help you, Dawn?
Oh, hi, how are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Can you hear me? So my husband is divorced, and I'm divorced, so we're remarried. And now we have kids, and I was reading about divorce. I shouldn't marry a divorced woman, and what do you do at this point?
Okay, so let me understand this. So you have been married before. Your husband has been married before. Now you're married to each other. So you read something that makes you think that maybe you shouldn't have gotten married?
Correct.
All right. Phil, what do you tell Don?
Yeah, Don, you do nothing. You change nothing. You're married now. You're in the situation that you're in. You live by the grace of God. You can't change the past, and so we're just going to accept this is where we're at right now, and we're gonna trust that God is going to work in your life right now. With the situation that you're in right now, God is present and He's for you. And so there's and the verse that you're kind of talking about there in the book of Matthew, there's kind of different understandings, not of the idea of divorce and the importance of staying married, but Jesus in that passage talks about that divorce was permissible because of the hardness of man's heart. So it's not a recipe for do this, don't do this, do this, don't this, but rather to say man's heart is hard, and really the Bible says evil, and I don't mean that as a judgment, but just simply to say that apart from Christ, we're lost. That's what the Bible declares. So you're now in a marriage, and you should stay married and be married and let God be totally a part of your marriage today in 2022. Embrace what God has for you guys now.
Does that help you, Don?
Yeah, it makes me feel better. I mean, we kind of figured that anyway, but every now and then I read and, I get guilty after reading the scriptures, so start feeling guilty, like, oh, man, what did I do? I can't get out of it. I don't want to get out of it, but you know how it is.
Isn't that funny that some people would read that and say, oh, good, I can get out of this now?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, that's not what it means.
Yeah, or we stay, or like I can't get out. I'm stuck. I'm trapped. It's misery. There's terrible sins happening, but I'm trapped. Or can I get out? This is the problem with seeing it as some kind of a recipe of like, well, now it's permissible and now it's not. This is the danger. Jesus says the heart of man is hard, and that's the real core of understanding that passage.
Don, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Great hearing from you from Virginia. Now we're going to go to California. Here is Lewis. What's up, Lewis?
Hey, how you guys doing? I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you guys' show, Brian, Bobby, and Phil. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Phil, I wanted to mention, if I could right quickly, that I wanted to thank you for mentioning the Chosen. I watched that, and it was really good. My question is...
You're welcome. Wait, hold on.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm just like, first of all, I was so appreciative that you would call in at all, and then you mentioned that. That's real. I'm glad you enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to your question.
Enjoy you guys' show, man. You guys are awesome.
Wow.
All of you guys, man. You guys are so wise. I learned so much from you guys.
Are we paying Lewis something? Is he getting
We
paid?
might have to.
We might have to.
Yeah.
That's right. Get this guy a raise.
We're going to double your salary. 0 times 0. Oh, never mind.
But my question is about the amethyst stone. Does it have healing properties?
The amethyst stone, is this the one we read in Revelation 21?
In Revelation, it's the last stone on the on 20, verse 20. I'm from Revelation 21. But I have bought amethyst stones, and when you buy them, they'll tell you, oh, these have this and this type of properties, and they can heal. And I just wanted to know, what was your perspective on that?
Wow. Bobby, what would you say?
I would say that I'm hesitant when it comes to stones and some of these types of things and what they're able to do. Now, let me say, I recognize that God has created an earth, and in this earth that there can be some healing properties. So, for example, people with psoriasis travel all the way to the Dead Sea to float in the Dead Sea because of the healing properties, of basically, especially they get that mud that's got all that salt in it, and they put that on their body, and that can have some healing properties. So I don't want to sound like, you can't find any kind of healing properties like Epsom salt and things like that. I think there is healing properties with things on earth. The thing that I would get hesitant of is when you get your new age people and they start getting connected to stones, and now these stones sort of become divinized, and they have like special properties and powers, and you almost sort of turn stones and crystals and tarot cards and all this kind of stuff into something more than it needs to be. Tarot cards, obviously, in particular. So I have no problem with Christians, so to speak, studying the earth that God has given to us and understanding. Like, think about even people as they age. There's creams that have healing properties that help the skin to not get as wrinkled as fast, or that can lighten age spots up. There's all kinds of stuff like that. And so I only say that to say that sometimes Christians can get, and I would have been one of those Christians at one time and like, oh my goodness, like, let's not talk about, but when you really just step back and go, well, I would hope that there would be some healing properties in the earth. Doctors have obviously figured some of this stuff out. It's called medicine. There's bad medicine, but there's good medicine. So the long answer is yes. The short answer is yes. The caution is when you pair it with New Age and those types of things like the occult, we have to be cautious.
What about when it comes to like marijuana? What do you say about that?
I would say that there can be a place for medical marijuana that. And I think it would be very, very selective. I think that it gets abused. So people saying, I'm anxious. Well, I'm anxious too. We have to figure out ways to deal with our anxiety. I'm talking about somebody that's dying of cancer, right? They're going through chemotherapy. They're nauseated. They're so frail because they can't keep their food down. Well, I think that marijuana can help people to have an appetite and then to get the food down, and therefore, and it can also help with some of the pain. So in that situation, yeah, I mean, because if somebody's going to really come at me on that, I'd say, well, that's a lot less dangerous than some of the codeine and other types of things that people get injected with after surgeries or heading their way into surgery. So on a medicinal level, I think that that's one example. I'm not saying that's the only example, but I think it would need to be very cautious in the way that it's used.
And I think apologists and theologians and pastors are going to answer that question about marijuana very different in the next 10 years. It's just, it's not that we're wrong today or right today only exclusively. Yeah. It's just that we're now it's now becoming a legal thing in the United States, and we're understanding, well, how is it going to be distributed? What is this going to look like? You know, most of us have friends who serve in the police forces. You know, my brother's a cop, and he'll say, "Man, a drunk person's more dangerous than a dude that did weed." It's so we're gonna, and again, this is not a like, yay, that's okay, and let's just go do whatever we want. It's simply to say that now that this thing has become legal, we're living between this paradigm that you guys were describing a bit earlier on, not only of philosophical thought, but of actual like practical like how we live. Like we just witnessed an illegal substance become a legal substance in our country. And so what does that look like? How does the Bible speak to that? How do we handle this as Christians? These are cultural questions we're going to be answering better and better in the coming years, I believe. I think, Bobby, great answer and very helpful to people to remind them that this is not a one or the other. It's a little of both, but with great modesty.
Yeah, and when it comes to even the discussion, let's just have it because it needs to be had. People in our congregations are thinking through their decision. Yeah. We need to start figuring out what the conversation is going to be like as it relates to recreational marijuana use as well. And that's going to be a scary territory. I would suspect that, the way that this conversation is going to go, it's going to sound a lot like the abolitionist conversation in the early days, and then people are going to slip into kind of a moderation feel here. There is a couple thoughts that I would have. Number one, we have to recognize the dangers that can be associated with marijuana use. With the THC levels, they're much higher than they used to be. And so abusing marijuana can be connected to paranoia, and it can be connected to, messing the prefrontal cortex up and working down the self-control center. People are going to make arguments though, like, okay, what if I take just a light amount that is equivalent to taking a beer or two? And that's going to be the discussion where, for me, I think that we have to be able to know how we can go about answering that. I would probably say something like this. Well, when somebody has a beer or two, it's an experience. So they're going to drink a beer. And again, just for listeners, I personally don't drink. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in over 4 years. I don't have a problem with people drinking in moderation. I think that the Bible lays that case out. My wife is one that will partake. That said, when somebody drinks, it's more of an experience. So for somebody to take marijuana as a recreational and just have a light amount where they're not getting intoxicated, well, that's like taking a bite of a cookie, right? And chewing it. That's not much of an experience. So then what you have to realize is you want something different than just the taste of the brownie. You want the effect of feeling what you would feel after the experience of drinking a glass or two of wine. Now, I don't think that that's bad. I think that, like, for example, I don't think as Christians we should fault people for wanting to feel good. I want to feel good. I wish that I could drink in moderation. I just can't. So I don't want to fault people for wanting to feel good. We all want to feel good. We just have to know what feeling good looks like with maintaining self-control. And that's going to be the key. And so this is going to produce some interesting conversations. And I would say to those who are listening, be merciful to those who are out on the front end leading as we strive to have this conversation, because this is new ground. And people like yourself are going to call up and you're going to ask us these questions, and we're going to have to think through things. Here's what you can know that we're always going to say. We have to maintain self-control. So if we ever do permit a certain amount, what we're doing is we're saying you have to figure out what that is where you maintain self-control. Let me say this. It's always wisest to abstain completely from everything, from alcohol included. You don't have to worry about it. But if you choose to do so, what are some principles? And so when Phil and I are talking, what we're trying to come up with is there's going to be some people that are just going to do it anyway. Well, how can we say, here are some guiding principles to not get drunk, to not get high, and to remember if you choose to go down that path? That's the conversation that's going to have to get entered by lots of people. I'm not sure exactly what it looks like, but we need to go there.
That's so good. And I think you're exactly right, Bobby. This is going to be the next several years, maybe many years, of just the iterations of these conversations. But I like what you said there, and I think it happens. I spend a lot of my time at the intersection of like theology and culture. And so that's where my fun place is, as a believer and as a pastor. But that puts me in a forward point that offends a lot of people, because you're talking about things that are like, wait, that's too far. That's the quote unquote liberal, or that's, what are you talking about? It's like, but if we don't start having those conversations in real time, it's going to hit us someday. And then what we'll end up doing is just doing this overreaction of like, no, it's all evil, it's all bad, it's all wrong. And we're going to push people away from Christ, that Christ is not pushing away himself. And so having these conversations is what helps us to start moving that needle, not of liberalism in our thinking, but in actual like understanding how to express these things to people. We're going to have people coming in who have no context of Christianity. And so we say, nope, you cannot do any of these things. They're just going to be like, wait, what planet are you on? Mm-hmm. But if we're able to talk that language a bit and to say, okay, we understand what you're talking about. We've done our own research as well, and we see why you want this or like this or need this, but here's another thought. And so it's going to take people to jump out at the forefront to have these conversations, and they'll get beat up along the way. That's kind of what normally happens.
And we've talked before, too, about the whole transgender movement that's happening right now. In a few years, some of these transgender people are going to come to Christ, and then what's our reaction going to be in the church?
That's right. And we have to wrestle with that. We have to reconcile these ideas that it's not just indicative of a fallen society. Our society has always been fallen. It's indicative of the fact that we're having just fresh conversations. We need to be a part of those.
Yeah, Bobby?
Yeah, we need to anticipate the questions that are coming our way in the church because we are in the midst of a moral revolution that is transpiring. We need to know the kind of questions that we got to be prepared to answer as it relates to the pronoun issues, as it relates to, kids' curriculum and what they're learning in the public schools. We need to be thinking through, all of these types of things. I mean, the thing that we have to be cautious of, though, and where I want to be really careful is, again, I'm not saying anything conclusive, right? We had somebody call up last week and say, I heard that Bobby's an annihilationist, and I don't know where that was even heard. But I went ahead and defended it. Sometimes I lay out different positions on things and people can hear that. And then maybe if I didn't give my perspective, they might pick one for me. But I would say, I'm not coming down conclusively on this. I'm saying what Phil said's right. This is a conversation. I will say this, though. It is Pandora's box that we open. When we go into this marijuana thing, we do need to be ready for backsplash. Like, okay, well, let's say that we legalize heroin. And now people want to inject just a very mild amount that just is equivalent to like a glass of wine or a glass of beer. Well, then how are we going to argue there? Or somebody wants to do therapeutic, hallucinogens. There is so much discussion here, but I feel like we need to kind of do some core work. Why is it that we're always just trying to figure out how we can partake of drugs, partake of alcohol? What is what is it that we feel like we need that? Can we be content without it? When you're wired like me as an alcoholic, you have to find a way to be content. I'm constantly, in restaurants where alcohol's around me. And that's a tough spot because sometimes, that cold beer that's sweating looks really good and I would like a glass. Some people would say, well, that sounds pretty depraved, bro. I'm trying to be authentic. Some people just, their testimony is, I've never craved a sip again. Well, that's just not the case for me. The burn of a whiskey can sound good. Some people go, but what are you guys doing with this guy on the radio? Well, honestly, I just feel like we need to be able to be authentic. Again, I have not had a sip of alcohol in over 4 years. And I'm trying to say that I have to figure out how to live with a total contentment in Christ. But on a tough day, I get why people go home and pour a glass of wine. Mm-hmm. I get why people go home and have a shot of whiskey. It's not an option for me, but for those that it is, that's great. But let's be careful that we don't just keep opening the doors where then we go home at night and we got our little bit of moderation of heroin, our little bit of moderation of marijuana, our little bit of moderation of alcohol. And yeah, we're content in Christ. We have to ask, is there something going on wrong in our life?
I just want to add something really quick for anybody who's maybe is new to the Pastor's Perspective program. And when they hear Bobby say that he hasn't had a sip of alcohol in 4 years, they're probably thinking, wait a minute, 4 years, that was not that long ago. Why is this guy on the radio? No, maybe you should just give the shorter, what should I say, the story behind that.
Yeah, I mean, the 1 minute answer to it is, anybody's interested, they can hear on YouTube Confessions of an Alcoholic Apologist. And there's 2 parts. My friend David Wood, who's an apologist, interviewed me on that. And it's going to show like 12 hits or so because he shut down his channel altogether and started something new. And then part 2 with my wife. I went 23 years almost without a sip of alcohol, slipped into depression and wondered if I could drink in moderation. And the experiment was a failure and ended up going back into recovery and getting my life straightened out. But I wasn't trying to go out and just get inebriated and blow it and do a bunch of consequences. I was trying to cope with life. Honestly, I was so utterly and deeply depressed in such a profound way that I had suicidal ideation. I didn't want to live. And, a wise person once said, if you have a gun in one hand and a bottle in the other, take the drink. And some of you go, wise? That sounds like a foolish statement. If you've ever been to that kind of despair, basically what somebody was saying is, hey, stick around for a while. And if you can't figure out how to go forward with even Jesus at this time, and you take the drink, I'd rather you take the drink than take your life. And God would meet me in a very powerful way, pull me out of that dark time. And now I'm speaking to people who are, considering drinking again, haven't in years. If you're a real alcoholic, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. The brain is broken in that way as it relates to alcohol for people like me.
Well, can I just say, let's normalize these kind of conversations. This needs to be normalized, that this is real life, normal. Rather than like, I can't believe this. Like, why not? This is humanity. Welcome to the real world, man. And I appreciate it, Bobby, so much. I've heard you share it a couple times now, and it's like I just love not what you had to go through, but just your story and just you sharing it in such a normal, it's not like I was this and now I'm this. It's like, no, I'm always these things. They're always present. This is my life. Like I am not reformed, so to speak. And I don't mean theologically, I mean as a human being, but by the grace of God, I'm holding on. And I think we just need to keep normalizing those. I just want to read these two verses in context to kind of what we were talking about, Bobby and Brian, on, we're talking about marijuana and things like this. Just a reminder, 1 Corinthians 6:12, all things are lawful, not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I'm not going to be brought under the power of any. And I think you're really hitting that point of, even if we're going to have these conversations about what is permissible, we still have to always come back to the idea of like, but why do you have to be under the power of anything save Christ in your life?
Yeah. Such a good point. When I was, I'll tell you want a vulnerable moment. Here was my depression. When you're sleeping in a closet because you're just so hollow, and all you could think of is, man, the life would be if this closet was filled with whiskey bottles and cigars, and I could just sit here in this closet and not leave till my job's done. And that was how dark my depression took me in despair. And if anybody's out there, I just want you to know that there's hope and that Jesus is good and he's loving and he can pull you through. But, Phil, I'm thankful for how you're inviting conversations like this, because sometimes people have these drastic stories and they quit drinking or drugs and they never had a crave ever again. And then their experience they expect should be everybody else's experience. Right. And then those who still struggle sometimes with maybe desiring that, they feel bad because they do. But here's a thought. I mean, that's great when that happens, but think about all of our weaknesses. Like if you struggle with complaining or gossip or anger, is it like just because you got saved, you never gossiped again? You never got angry again? You never lusted again? Well, why should we expect the alcoholic to never desire a drink again just because he knows Jesus? In fact, that had such a grip on that person's life. So then we treat that person as if they haven't really been rescued, because every now and then they still crave a drink. Well, what about the person who used to cuss like a sailor? I mean, do you ever get really angry and you think it would feel really good to drop a 4-letter bomb right now, like really good?
Yes.
But
you weren't asking me, sorry.
Right.
Rhetorical.
Yeah, okay. Like I've heard people say that feels very therapeutic just to drop it. Well, I get it. Like I think that, my baseball coach knew that when I was younger, I had an anger problem. He took me inside of basically this, this trailer, and he gave me a baseball bat, and he said, I want you to hit these bags as hard as you can and get the anger out, because I was just messed up at that stage, right? That felt good. But that doesn't mean just because it feels good, you need to do it. It would feel good to have a drink. It might feel good to say an expletive, but don't confuse the feeling good of saying the wrong thing with being right.
Yeah. So good. Wow.
Good conversation. Thank you so much for calling us with your original question, Lewis. We just kind of went off on this other trail here.
From amethyst to marijuana.
Yes. We discuss it here on Pastor's Perspective. We are not live today if you're listening on the radio on Monday, but we've got lots of calls that we want to get to. Yeah. Man, oh man, let's go to, South Africa, Chantel. Hi there. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Hello. I normally send my messages in through Facebook, but I thought I'd try the phone this time.
Thank you.
My husband's been going through a really difficult time with work. He's got a lot of businesses and, sometimes everything just goes wrong at once. I've been a stay-at-home mom for about 6 years, so I thought, okay, let me go and I'm going to help him. And I've taken a lot of the things off his plate. And things at home are getting difficult because there's nobody running the house. And the more I seem to give in and help and take off his plate, he's loading his plate with other things, and it's church things. So he's on the missions committee, he's on the management committee, and they've now asked him to be the treasurer. So at home, we're not getting family time, we're not getting husband-wife time, and there's this guilt because I feel I can't say no because it's a church, but in the same breath, I can't pour out more at this stage. I'm kind of like spent. There's not much. I can't take up more slack. I can't, and we kind of argue a bit about it. I'm not very good sometimes with, how can I say, being a bit more patient, but I just, at this point, I feel like I have been supporting, but I really want him to say no to being the treasurer at this point, and I don't know if I'm doing the wrong thing.
You can do it for him. You can just send a letter to the church and forge his signature and say, I will not be the treasurer. I'm sorry. No, I'm joking. That's not the correct answer. You will get the real answer in just a little bit. We do have to take a break, Chantel. Thank you for holding for a super long time. We'll get back to your question and the answer to it from Phil Metzger and Bobby Conway on Pastor's Perspective, not live on this Monday, but recording on Thursday, the 8th of September. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can call us right now using the number right there on the bottom of your screen. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a little bit. Hang on. Hey, welcome back to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and not live on Monday, the 12th of September, if that's when you're listening on the radio. But if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube on the 8th of September, that's when we're recording this episode, we would love to hear from you. You can call us using the number there on the bottom of your screen, which I'm not going to say on the radio because then people will be calling in on Monday when we're not live. Nobody's here to answer the phone. So that's just for you guys watching on Facebook and YouTube. It's right there on the bottom of your screen. Give us a call. My name is Brian Perez. Bobby Conway and Phil Metzger are answering your questions. And right before the break, we were talking to Chantel, who's calling in from South Africa. And she's just got this situation where her husband works a lot. Now he's getting called in to do more stuff at his church. And Chantel's just like, we're running out of, there's not enough hours in the day. How do you manage this?
Yeah. In fact, Chantel, I wanted to ask one more question to your, thank you for what you shared already, what you shared before the break. But I did want to ask you this question. Like, do you feel that you've expressed your concerns and your heart to your husband up to this point? I think I probably know the answer, but it'd be good to just get that clear. Like, do you feel like it's been clear to him that you guys cannot take any more on your plates?
I've been very clear about it, and it's my tendency is to be a bit, I would say, too much, but I've really tried very hard to do it as graciously as possible, which is not normally how I do things, to be honest. I can be a bit emotional, but after he just kind of threw it in one day, it's like he'd already accepted it, and then I kind of blew up a bit.
Sure.
But he does know, because I keep bringing it up, and this last thing, he just kind of, he doesn't like conflict, so he kind of avoids the discussion.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts then, and thanks for your honesty and thanks for expressing that. A couple thoughts. One, it is, I'll just say this is not one of the thoughts, but a comment. This is pretty common, when churches, have people like yourselves that are obviously incredibly well-meaning, hardworking, thoughtful and caring. We tend to pull those people in, and we need people like yourself to say no. We need you to, because we'll just, hey, could you do this? Hey, can you do this? And that very feeling that you express that, well, can I say no? Can my husband say no to the church? The answer is, and I'm a pastor of a church, I want to make sure that's very clear. Can I say no to the church? The answer is yes. You can say no. We need you to at times. We need you to say, we are in a situation where we're so overwhelmed that if and my husband will do this no matter what, he's going to do it because he just wants to serve. He wants to help. I think that this is a good time, Chantel, for you to maybe ask your husband if you and he could talk to the pastor, could talk to the church, and just you could express your concerns. I think it sounds like your husband loves you, but he just feels it hard to say no. And maybe you could be a help in that. It sounds like, again, this is an overachieving guy. If you jump in to help him, he just adds more to the plates, and that has a limit. And I think the church is the place where it should reach its limit. And what I mean by that is that this is the place where we value healthy relationships, not just using people because they're capable, but also we value that you would grow in your relationship with God, in your marriage, in your home. We don't want to see you burned out, but being used by the church. So I think maybe you need to ask your husband if you and he could have a sit down with the pastor. You could express your concerns and then work these things together. If he's open to that, it might be your best option.
What do you think, Chantel?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That helps.
Do you think your husband will be open to that?
I think if I had to tell him to say no, he will, because he wants to please. But I don't know even, is that supporting my husband? Is that I've also got that bit of a, submissive thing that I'm trying to work on myself. Is trying not to always tell him what to do spiritually, and trying to not tell him what to do. And so it's kind of like, if whatever I tell him to do, he'll probably do it. But I don't know if I'm overstepping then as well. There's a bit of a conflict there in myself.
Well, marriage, Chantel, as you know, you're married. It's a partnership. It's not, I understand what you mean about that idea of being submissive, but I think there's also a place where we recognize that marriage is a partnership, and you see things that maybe your husband is not seeing, and maybe he sees things that you don't. So having that conversation together, and maybe even inviting leadership from the church if you think that they'll be understanding. You know your home just like your husband knows your home. So coming to an agreement together is going to be more important than just who wins and who gets right and who's wrong. It's more about, hey, I'm concerned about this. And I think that it sounds like, if he's willing to listen to you, it's gonna work out.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much.
Chantel, thank you for calling us. We know that it's like 1 a.m. right now in South Africa. So that's how busy Chantel is. Yeah. She's up at 1 o'clock in the morning right now to call us on the program here.
Amazing.
But seriously, thank you for your phone call, and we pray the best for you and your husband. This is Pastor's Perspective. Now we're going to go to Doug in Illinois. What is up, Doug? What did you want to know? Something about the book of Acts.
Yes, first-time caller, long-time listener. Here.
What took you so long to call, Doug?
Yeah, I know. Well, I've tried before. Saul becoming Paul through Jesus' interaction, later in Acts, and then earlier in Acts, Paul and the other 10 getting together and saying, we needed 12. Well, 12 was the number. Well, then Paul made it 13. So there's a 12 was the perfect number, and then there's Paul coming later.
Yeah, did there have to be 12 in order for this to work, Bobby? What would you say? Like as each one died off, that they each get replaced, or what's the story?
No, I mean, again, they're the kind of the foundation of the new covenant. And so 12 is just a title that is used. So when you think about Paul being added on and being seen as kind of the 13th one, because obviously after Judas went out, they replaced him with the casting of lots, which we see in the book of Acts. So when Paul comes on, they still just retain the reference of the 12, but the 12 was kind of like a title, an expression. It didn't have to be exactly 12 people all the time. It was just in reference to those who were followers of Jesus during his earthly ministry and or eyewitnesses of his resurrection.
Phil, any thoughts?
No, I mean, yeah, that's exactly right. And for clarity, Doug, on your question, when they gathered together, Paul was not a part of that at that moment. And so then he was kind of later, God called him to be an apostle. And we see throughout even in the book of Acts and later in the writings of Paul, he refers to other people as apostles. So as Bobby shared, there was this kind of title, this idea, but there's not this like role where when one died, they were replaced, or, Paul's the quote unquote 13th. It doesn't work like that. He was an apostle. God called him. And then there were the apostles, but it's a great answer, Bobby. I think it was already helpful enough. Good job.
What do you think, Doug?
Thanks, bro.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for calling us today from Illinois. Next, we're going to go to Julie in California. Julie, it says here, has a new friend who's into what? Julie?
Occultic things.
Occultic things like tarot cards and crystal balls. And you want to know if you should keep hanging around with this person.
Yeah, she has like angel tarot cards, crystal ball, a lot of occultic things. She was once a Mormon, and she's a new friend, but I don't know if I should continue to be friends with her or...
Now, is she asking you to do any of these things with her?
She asked and I said no.
Well, that was good that you said no. Phil, what do you say?
Yeah, good job, Julie. Yeah, it's such a great question. And people ask these kinds of questions a lot, like, my friend is into this, should I be friends with them? And the question I like to put back to that person is this: what do you think? And so are you going to be, and you already asked it, Brian, are you, Julie, and whoever else would have this kind of a question, are you going to be adversely affected by these things? So somebody has tarot cards in their house. Can I be friends with them? Well, the question is, can you? Can you be near that? Is it going to negatively influence you? Are you unable to put yourself in that kind of a situation? Again, I'm going to, with Bobby's permission on this, like he's already made so clear, like, hey, listen, I know other people can do certain things. I can't do those things. You have to know yourself. I know myself, what I can and what I shouldn't do. And I think a lot of being a Christian is learning about the Lord and about myself, to know, like, gosh, these are limitations that I need to put upon myself. I will not do well in this situation or with these kinds of friends. And so before we answer the question of, can you have that kind of friend? It's, can you be that friend that that person needs? That person needs a friend who is a believer, who's not going to be influenced by the tarot cards, the crystal balls, and those kinds of things. If you can't be that person, then no, it's not going to work out. But if you can be and not be influenced in a negative way towards those things, then you might be the very friend that God has put in that person's life for such a time as that. So you got to know yourself to know what's best.
What do you say, Julie?
Well, she had a Gideon Bible, and I gave her a study Bible, and that's a big question that I have to ask myself. Would I?
I mean, do you find yourself tempted or anything? Are you kind of drawn to the idea of looking into this kind of stuff?
No, I don't want to know.
Okay.
I don't know if it's of the Lord.
Bobby?
It's not of the, sorry, Bobby, I didn't mean to catch up. It's not of the Lord. Those things are not of the Lord. And if you're not sure, whatever is not done in faith is sin. Be sure. Have a real confidence of, this is how God's leading me. I want to be a good friend to this person, or I don't know if I can be a friend to this person. Answer that question. When you answer that question, you'll know how to step forward, Julie.
Yeah, Bobby?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well said.
All right, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Now let's go to Frank in California. What did you want to know, Frank?
Yeah, hey, I'm. How you guys doing? Good afternoon. I'm reading this book. The third time I've read it, The Pilgrim's Progress, and it sounds exactly like what everyone's been talking about. And as I read my Bible side by side, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I haven't drank in about 15 years, and it seems like I've gone through every one of these towns that's in this book. I'm 60 years old now. And what do you think of this book, and what do you think of it in relation to all the different temptations and trials that we go through as Christians?
All right. So first of all, question, have you guys read this book? Phil, Bobby, we've all heard of it, but have you read it? Okay. So Bobby, What do you tell Frank?
This is obviously a great classic. At one time, it was the number 2 most selling book in the world, behind the Bible. My favorite story about John Bunyan is when he was in prison, they brought him some bread and water, and he replied by saying, "All this and Jesus too." And I thought, man, that's some contentment right there. All this and Jesus too, with his bread and water. Life just takes us down some different roads. And I think that there's a lot that can be gained by reading a book like Pilgrim's Progress. It's obviously, it's not scripture, but it's like reading any of these great books. If you read The Great Divorce or Screw Tape Letters, with Screw Tape Letters, where the evil one would try to take us down if he could, like he tried to take the patient down. Who do you identify? Which town do you identify? When you're reading The Great Divorce, which characters can you relate to? It's always good to do that kind of stuff when we're reading these kind of books. But John Bunyan, his story is great. I had the privilege to see his casket there in London and go to the spot where he's buried, and his tombstone is just really cool because you see, Christian with his backpack, which represents all of his burdens and the weight of his sins, and he's carrying it. And then you see that he comes to a cross and he's free. And I think that between the point when we get saved and when we finally get home, there's this backpack, so to speak, and we're just trying to unload sin along the way to get freer and to walk more with Jesus. And the quicker we can get rid of those obstacles in the way, the better off our journey with him will be.
So where's this at?
It's in London. It's actually right across the street from John Wesley's house. John Wesley had some different lodgings, but he had you can go and see John Wesley's house and see kind of the room where he prayed in and spent time with the Lord. Bunhill Fields across the street, the graveyard that John Bunyan is buried in.
Phil?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Pilgrim's Progress is, as Bobby said, it's one of the greatest books of all time. It's very rare for a book to stay relevant as long as this book has.
Yeah.
And so, kudos to him for writing a book that has literally, you could pick it up today, just as Frank has, and read that and go, wow, I'm gaining, it's got relevance for today. Very few books have done that in time.
Right.
So, it's a great allegory to the Christian life. Well worth the read. If you're a reader and you haven't read it, read it. You'll enjoy it.
Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Check that out. Okay, here's a Facebook question sent in by Kathy and Paul. They want to know, in Numbers 22, why did God permit Balaam to go on a journey, speaking of journeys, and then God becomes angry that Balaam went? Was God testing Balaam? What do you think, Bobby?
Balaam got out ahead of himself, so he didn't wait until the messengers came to go. So he got out in front and impulsively went. And obviously, Balaam found himself in trouble as the story goes on from there.
Phil?
No, that's it. He got ahead of God. He got ahead, did his own thing. God's like, nope. And it's a great answer.
All right, Kathy and Paul, thanks for sending that question in. Okay, so we just got a call from South Africa. Now we've got a call from Australia? Really?
Yay.
Wow. Hello, Natalie.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. What time is it in Australia right now? If it's 1 a.m. in South Africa, it's probably, 3 a.m. where you are?
It's 10 to 10 in the morning.
10 till 10 in the morning. Oh, I was way off.
Hey, never mind. We were feeling sympathy for you, Natalie.
Yeah. She's more awake than we are.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are you listening to the program, first of all?
I was watching live on Facebook.
Okay.
However, my husband and I listen through the KWVE app daily, pretty much.
God bless, guys.
Oh, yeah. Good to hear you.
God bless you too, bro.
In Australia. Wow, that is so cool. I've always wanted to go to Australia. I guess I'm in Australia now.
Can we do pastor's perspective on the road? Can we do a pastor's perspective around the world? Let's go.
Invite us to your church, Natalie. We'll be there.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Our pastor, and sorry, this is Matt's husband, Sam here. So, hey guys, how you going?
Doing well.
Oh, good.
We're actually very blessed. We've got our pastor, Brad Hall, who is actually good friends with Brian Broderson. So I don't know if you've heard of Brad before, but
of course,
very blessed that God's really planted just an amazing church all the way actually in the Northern Beaches in Sydney. So we're super.
One Love.
One Love Church.
That's amazing. I know, Brad. Yep. Cheers to you guys. Good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So what's your question for us today?
Yes, we had a question around the 144,000 that are sealed. We just wanted to know a bit more clarity around are they around for the whole tribulation? And if you could just explain again around the 144,000.
All right, Phil, you want to start with that?
In Revelation.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and then I'll let Bobby clean up and just hit that home run.
Well, Bobby just finished teaching through Revelation, so he might even have a... that's why he's cleaning up.
Exactly, because he's going to be like, well, that was cute, what Phil said. Let me now express this.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so it's a good question.
I'm just going to lay out 3 or 4 positions, Phil, so just go ahead.
Bobby will give us so many different options. We'll be like, wait, what was the question? I don't even know anymore.
That's right.
That's the best way to answer questions. I'm learning all the time. So it's a good question. To be clear to your question, we don't know if they lived through the whole tribulation. We have no idea. And again, I know Bobby can address this because, again, I think he does a great job when he does this, but there's different interpretations of how people see this 144,000 as well. Is it a literal 144,000? Is it representative of something, more complete and so on? If you take a literal approach, if you take it literally, then I can say literally, we don't know how long they all live, if they live through the whole tribulation, or do some not live through the tribulation, do others that we just don't know. If you take a literal approach, you take it to be Jews who are born again during the time of the tribulation, and God uses them in very unique, powerful ways to be a witness across the world to the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's different interpretations of that. People who hold different interpretations, and I'll let Bobby express those, they're not foolish, they're not ridiculous, it's not in error, we just have different interpretations of that. Bobby, I'll hand it over.
Yeah, well said, Phil. So the one interpretation I know we're in agreement on is that it's not the 144,000, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, that are going to exclusively get to heaven.
That's right.
Setting that interpretation aside, then if you have a pre-tribulation stance, then you would not leave room to use the other interpretation, which some would say the 144,000 are representative of the church. But there would be people who would take like a post-tribulation stance that would see the 144,000 as representative of the church. So the question is, who is this audience? Well, they're in the tribulation period. Some would say it represents the church. You would have to not be a pre-trib to take that stance. Others would say it represents, Jewish people who will get saved. Then some even really, they'll say, hey, this is just a mass amount of Jewish people be saved, or literally 144,000 Jewish witnesses. It gets a little bit problematic because you see that they're called virgins. Is this actual virgins, or is it spiritual virginity, that they're pure? And they're seen to be males. So is this just 144,000 Jewish males that are going around witnessing? The problem with calling them Jewish evangelists for me is I've heard that, and I used to say that, but then I would start looking at it and I was going, where does it say in the context? Like in Revelation 7, for example, what happens is you hear about the 144,000 and then you learn about this great multitude, but you have to make an assumption that the great multitude is the result of the 144,000, and I'm not sure you can do that without some eisegesis. And so then they end up being called, the evangelists. So I would say that. So you see what I'm saying? It's that there's this 145,000. They're called the evangelists, and then there's this great multitude. Mm-hmm. Well, whoever this number is, obviously they're going to be doing evangelism. But the question then becomes: is this a symbolic number? Or is it a literal number? And I would be more inclined to say it's probably a symbolic number representing God's people during the tribulation era. And things like spiritual virginity, so to speak, in that they have been set apart for God. Obviously, they're going to be doing evangelism. There's lots of numbers in the Bible that are metaphorical and are figurative, and sometimes they're not. The tough thing is we don't always know when it's literal when it's not. A lot of these numbers I take to be exact, literal. Sometimes I'm not sure when I can't. But here's what I can guarantee. Nobody perfectly interprets all of the numbers in the Bible perfectly as figurative or literal every time. Sometimes we're just at a loss sometimes in that department.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's exactly right. It's unknown. So we have these different ways that we're interpreting it. And, like you said, like Bobby said, if you're pre-tribulation, you're going to see it this way. If you don't hold to a pre-tribulation, you're going to see it this way. We have grace and respect and love among all the different perspectives.
Yeah. Natalie, thank you for calling us from Australia.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. God bless.
God bless you too. And in case anybody's wondering, the church that Natalie mentioned, it's called One Love Church. You can find out more about them at onelovechurch.online. Always kind of cool to see what the Lord is doing in different parts of the world. So check that out, onelovechurch.online. Thanks for calling us today, Natalie. God bless you and your husband and your pastor, Brad Hall. That is all the time we have on today's program. We are going to be live tomorrow between 3 and 4 p.m. Pacific time. I have to say Pacific time because we've got listeners in South Africa and Australia and everything. So check the globe and see when you can call us here on Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.